Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful and oh so lovely neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, on Stitcher Radio, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is our friend Leslea Wahl. She is here to tell us about some great historical fiction that you will want to check out with your kids. Before Leslea joins us, I want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Design to Shine, by our friend Joy Reeser. Design to Shine. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Open any page of Design to Shine for a rhyme with art for your heart. Topics will lead you and your loved ones into fun, laughter, and joy, and onto the dance floor. You'll receive ideas to pay attention in new ways, reminders about kindness, and so much more in this alphabetical treasure. This is a book. This is a guide. This is a gentle teacher all at once. Design to Shine is a book for you. It's a book for your child, and it's a book for your inner child about loving who we are to shine in the world. It's available now, Designed to Shine, by our buddy Joy Reeser, a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Joining us on the line right now from beautiful Colorado. She is a regular guest here in the show, bringing to us some fantastic suggestions for books of faith that we may want to read with our teens and our middle grade kids. Please welcome back to the show the author of The Perfect Blind Side, Leslea Wahl. Leslea, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me again. It's always fun to be on.
Glad to have you back. Now, I know that this is being published later, but we're actually recording this on Thursday, February 27th, the day after Ash Wednesday, which is a huge day in the Christian faith, especially in the Catholic Church. I imagine you went out and got your ashes yesterday?
Yes, I sure did. It's always so fun to see, all the people that show up and do it and are proud of their faith. It's kind of cool. It
is. And yesterday my wife and I were talking about how filled the church was. Unfortunately, that kind of stands out when we go to church and the pews are filled. But I have to tell you, Leslea, I don't know if you ever feel this way. My daughter first brought this to my attention back when she was in middle school many years ago. We're at Mass, and we're listening to the readings, and we're listening to that very, very powerful gospel where Jesus says to us, when you pray, pray in private. Don't let anybody see you. When you give alms, do it in private. Don't be shouting like the hypocrites. When you do good deeds, do it in private. Don't let anybody else know about it. And then they say, they end the gospel, and we have a short little homily, and then everybody lines up to get this big smash of ashes on their forehead. So then you walk outside like have a billboard on your head going, hello, I'm Catholic. It's just...
that is funny.
Yeah, it's like, okay, not quite what the gospel was saying, but I've heard the explanation for it, and it's like, oh, okay. But I always find that funny, and I was just chuckling about it yesterday at Mass myself.
That is funny. It's interesting what kids can pick up. Sometimes we don't even think about it.
Absolutely. And it's really great. And that's one of the things that I loved encouraging both of my kids to do was when they saw something that didn't make sense to them happening in the church, to question it. And to ask questions, and certainly to ask questions of me. And if I didn't have the answers, I had no problem going up to a priest and saying, "Yo, Father, I feel this contradiction here. My kids pointed it out to me. What do you think?" And it's really, really important because that's the way we learn, and it's also how we find out when things aren't being done the way they're supposed to be done.
Absolutely, because we know that church is run by people who have faults, and so it's always good to keep track of that. And it's good to question, I think, because it helps you strengthen your faith and find out why certain things are done. And, it just is another level to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, today, Leslea is going to be sharing with us 3 great books in the historical fiction field that we may want to read with our kids, with our teens and our middle grade kids. So what's the first book today, Leslea?
Yeah, the first one, it's actually about a saint, but it's set in the time of the Vikings, which is kind of exciting. It's called Saint Magnus, Magnus, Magnus the Last Viking, by Susan Peake. She is one of my favorite authors. I've actually met her a few times, so we're good friends too now. But she has a whole series of books about actual saints, but ones that aren't as well known. She calls them the God's Forgotten Friends. But she takes the story of the saints and uses the actual facts and then turns it into this exciting adventure. I just love how she works. So this one's about Saint Magnus, as I said, and he's a saint from the early 1100s, and he was a Viking back in that area of the world, and it's just interesting to see that time of life and the Viking way of life and so forth. And so I just love that. And then she has this wonderful story between Magnus and his brother, which is just a fabulous relationship. Some good and some bad, it's typical brothers probably. And it's just an exciting and dramatic period of time that she has this book set in. And I love historic fiction because you just learn so much in a period of history, geography and history, and this one also has theology lessons. It just really makes a great read.
And I love historical fiction, too. I think it's especially helpful to give kids some perspective and understanding on how differently we are living now as opposed to the time of the Vikings or even back when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. I know when you're growing up and all you know is what's around you, it's very hard to kind of picture that. So that's why it's so fun to see and picture yourself back then and what they're doing and just the hardships they have in life, of how they had to do things. Kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, and I love that name, Saint Magnus. It does sound like a very Viking name.
Yeah, I think of it. And sometimes I think a lot of historic fiction that I see, it's kind of more geared for girls and stuff. This one's very strong for boys, but I think girls would love it too because there's plenty of people in all of Susan's books. Like her, she has one on Saint Dymphna is for girls, but has again strong male characters. So she's great at including both and making them really relatable. And I also like she kind of uses more modern language. So it makes it easier for kids to enjoy because if it's, set with the Old English or something, it's sometimes harder for them to get into.
And one of the things one of the reasons I love reading about the saints is that we discover that the saints, while the saints weren't always saints, they were human beings that were flawed and had to grow. Exactly,
and that's such a good lesson to learn because we all are like that, and some, you're right, have very terrible backgrounds, but they saw the light, so to say, and came around and made such a difference in the world for us.
All right, so that is Saint Magnus, the Last Viking by Susan Peake. Love it. What else do we have?
The next one is called Shadow in the Dark, The Chronicles of Zan, which is X-A-N. And it's by Anthony Barone, B-A-R-O-N-E. This is, again, actually all the books today, I didn't even realize, all have strong male characters in our historic fiction. But again, I think they would all be great for all kids. This one's set in the Middle Ages, a medieval village. It's a story of a boy who is injured and loses his memory, and a group of Benedictine monks take him in and give him a new name, which is Alexander. So he's going by Zan for short. And as he begins to heal and he discovers his identity and what happened to him and his village and so forth, and in the process he uncovers this sinister plot that not only involves his past but places him and the monks in danger. So it has a lot to offer: adventure, mystery, history, and faith. And it would be even good for like older elementary to middle school boys because it's a real swashbuckling type of tale. So I enjoyed this one a lot. And this is the first book in the series, so if you enjoy it, there's more to enjoy.
You know, I think growing up, I always, when I looked at priests, I kind of saw them, living in the rectory, and they drove nice cars around, and they had the vestments on Sundays, and I thought they had a pretty cushy life. But throughout history, priests and monks and sisters, a lot of them led some really dangerous, daring, exciting lives. Even today, in different parts of the world, there are priests and nuns who are risking their lives to make a difference in other people's lives.
Good point, because in a lot of the world, even like you said, even today, faith is not, you're not able to express it like we can here in the United States, and so they are putting themselves in danger. But you're right, this is kind of interesting to think about how monks live and the religious life and so forth, and who goes into it and the kind of people. Because you're right, when children see a monk or a priest or a nun, they kind of seem like this someone who's not very approachable sometimes and so forth. So it's kind of interesting to see a different take on it.
I think that's something that's really, really important for our kids to understand is, we're talking about saints being people and saints being flawed people. I think it's really important for our kids to understand that priests and sisters and nuns and monks and popes are human beings, and they have flaws and they have struggles. And I think it's really wonderful, and I think it's really important for us as parents, if we want our kids to grow up with faith and a real healthy faith, it would be really healthy for them to get to know their priests and their sisters as human beings and to develop real relationships with them, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think it would be a wonderful thing to include in the family. I know I'm a convert, but my husband said when he was younger, sometimes people would have little home masses and invite just friends and the priest over. I just thought that was kind of a really cool way to get to know them and have a meal and a more intimate setting.
It really is. We've been very blessed to have been able to do that, and it really is special. I think one of the things that I think is both a help and a hindrance is the whole mysticism that is surrounding the Mass sometimes. And I know some people really like that. They like the bells and the smells, and they like to be kind of feel like they've been taken to another place in this beautiful cathedral. But for me, I really love those really intimate Masses where we're sitting down as family. And celebrating, which is a lot like the way the original apostles were celebrating Mass.
That's just as you were saying that, I was thinking that's exactly how it was. They just came together in a room in someone's home to do it together. And it's neat that we've grown, but yeah, it would be nice to have that experience too. Have the big cathedral, but to have smaller, intimate ones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the third book on your list?
Okay, and the third one is called Perilous Days by Catherine Griffin. And this one is a middle grade as well, and it's set in World War II. But this is the story of a young Catholic teen named Felix who happens to be growing up in Germany. And his family sees the horrors that are sort of unfolding around them, but they're really kind of unable to do much about it. All they can do is try to survive what's happening. But things quickly change when Felix and his German Shepherd dog, Rolf, are forced to join the German army. And they're assigned to a special canine unit, which was searching for injured soldiers. So there was a couple really interesting things in this book. One, it's interesting to think about the Germans and the everyday people that were kind of forced into this world. And the book actually talks about several German Catholics who risked everything to try to expose the evil that was in their country and to save the vulnerable citizens. And it was also interesting to learn about this special canine unit, which apparently did go around. I never really thought about some of those things. I read a lot of books on World War II, but never really from the inside, from a German perspective. So I thought that was interesting and great for kids because they obviously learn about World War II in history. So this could kind of give an interesting little take to it that they might not otherwise think about.
Yeah, what's that saying? If we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that was such a horrific time in the human experience. We have to do everything we can to remember it, to honor those who were persecuted and lost their lives, and also to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was it was a good one. Really enjoyed it, and it's pretty quick read, but.
Interesting. Again, you pointed out that there's a lot has been written about World War II, but we don't oftentimes read anything or see any media that is taking us and looking at the war from that German perspective.
I often have wondered, it's like, how could the people let this happen? But it's easy for us to think that later on in life, at where we're at. And so it's interesting to see that from these poor German citizens, and they're not really getting much information. They're just kind of hearing things here and there. And what do they do? Because there's soldiers, surrounding them. So it was a good perspective.
I'm interested, Leslea. What was it that you just shared with us that you converted to Catholicism? What was it that motivated that move for you?
Okay, well, first I married a Catholic, but I didn't convert right away. We kind of tried different churches, trying to find something that in the middle, I would guess you would kind of say, and we never really could find that. My husband realized that, it was important for him to be in the Catholic Church, so I went with him. But I didn't convert until after we had kids, and my oldest was getting to the age for First Communion and reconciliation, and he was going through the classes, and I just thought, I'm making this a priority for him, and we're excited about Catholic school, and yet, I haven't made the choice, and so that just became obvious to me that, because I was the one pushing the Catholic school and so forth, so it was important for my family, but I just hadn't made the leap myself. And part of that, I think I grew up Mennonite, and to me that was kind of an identity. And so it was kind of hard to give that little piece up. But when I realized the amazing things that the church was offering, it became easy. So, and I've actually grown in my faith a lot through my writing, because I found other Catholic authors and become friends with them online, and it's amazing how much you keep growing and learning.
Yeah, it really is, and that's one of the things about the Catholic Church. It has been around for such a long time, and there have been so many amazing scholars and doctors of the Church. There's so much has been written. There's so many great things that have happened in the church because of the church. There's a lot of bad things that have happened that we need to learn from too. So, it's and I think it's important too. A lot of Catholics, they kind of I don't know the expression, but they get their they check off the sacrament list, and when they get to confirmation, they go, "Oh, I graduated. I graduated from faith formation. I don't need to learn anything else about my faith," and I think that's really short-sighted.
Yeah, and that's so sad. And I don't know how it is out there, but they kind of changed having confirmation younger because I think they didn't want to lose the kids. But yeah, I fear that so many will just be like, okay, yeah, done. Mm-hmm. And it's so sad because there's so much you can keep growing and learning. I think that's what, life's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. It is all about us growing and learning. Tell us where we can find your great books. I mentioned The Perfect Blind Side. You have a number of fantastic books. What's the latest one?
Yes, the newest one that came out recently is called Extreme Blind Side. Mm-hmm. So it's the sequel, the second book in the Blind Side series, an exciting adventure. So it's set in Colorado at an extreme sporting event, so it's very fun.
Awesome. And please remind us of your website.
Yeah, it's my name, LeslieWahl.com, which it's spelled a little different, LeslieAWAHL. Or you can also reach it through ministrythroughmystery.com.
Ooh.
They both will go there.
Ooh, Ministry Through Mystery. I love that. We've had a great time talking about 3 great books, 3 great historical fiction books of faith that we may want to sit down and read with our teens and our tweens. St. Magnus, The Last Viking by Susan Peake, Shadow in the Dark by Anthony Barone, and Perilous Day by Catherine Griffin. And we've been talking about these books with our friend Leslea Wahl. Leslea, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you next time.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Michelle Person. She is the founder of Just Like Me Books, and she'll be here telling us about her book, Nathaniel English and Leaders of the Revolution. Really excited to speak to Michelle. She is an educator. She's an author. She has some fascinating insights that you do not want to miss. Hey, we don't want you to miss a minute of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. That's why we want to encourage you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/Reading with Your Kids. At Jedley Magic on Twitter. At Reading with Your Kids on Instagram. We have all sorts of fantastic shows coming your way, including a brand new special series coming from me and our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. Can't tell you anything more about it right now. It is top secret. But I can tell you it's going to be amazing. And your kids are going to love listening to the show with you. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our buddy Leslea Wahl. Check out the books that she shared with us today, and also check out her book. She is an amazing author. Also want to thank my fantastic team, my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank you. You are the most important member of this team. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you wash your kids' hands and sanitize the counters. And, of course, every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.